Kind of hobnoppy. Membi Tuscarora Miha. Welcome back to Iconic American Indian, the podcast. I'm your host, Opie Miha. And as always, hope everyone is having a great day. Let some music flow till we get some people into the live stream. Appreciate everybody being here. Peace to everybody that just joined in on the live stream. Rocking out to some music for a few minutes till we get some people into the stream. Peace to everybody that's in here. Appreciate you. Also, when you come in, bang the like button. P. Miss Bree, appreciate you being here. Thank you, sis. Fred, what's good? Hey, Fred, how's that coming through on Discord? So I'm trying something new out, y'all. I'm streaming from Discord, Mixcloud, and YouTube. So, trying to see how this is going so far. So, there is...
Shalom, kind of hobnoppy.
What's good, Ty? I can hear you.
Can you hear me, Opie? Because you coming in low, so I'm asking if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, Fred, do you think he coming in lower an adjustment I need to make?
Sounds pretty good to me.
Okay. Good. Good to hear.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So, everybody on YouTube, just a quick question. Can you hear me conversating with the people on Mixcloud? And just let me know in the comments on YouTube if you can hear me talking to the people. You can hear them talking to me, I guess. Because again, this is my first time running that. So let me see here. Because I can actually have real-time interaction with the people on Discord.
So I fixed my volume issue by actually hitting that speaker button, by the way.
Got you. Okay. All right. So those who are on Discord, if you want to chime in on anything, you can, because I think they can hear you. So yeah. All right, y'all. All right, Willis, appreciate you being here. Sweet Kajik, pieces, appreciate you being here. Rojo Chief Clothing, peace. Miss Shauna, good to see you. Brother Fred, Sister Bree, good to have all y'all in here. Okay, so today I wanted to cover the I'm just checking all these different streams I got going on here. So again, I'm testing this out, y'all. This is me trying to stream from 3 different platforms. So, we trying it out. Michael Mataponi, Indian Harris, peace, brother. Rod Jeweler, good to see you, peace. All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and get into this. So I'm not holding y'all here all day. Music levels, okay. Give me a 1. If the music is too loud, give me a 2, and I'll turn it down. Yeah, just let me know.
So, Opie, from Discord, I can't hear any music.
Okay, so you don't hear the music. Okay, so you just hear me. Okay, got you.
What about Fred?
Fred, you hearing any music on your end?
No music.
Okay, got you. Okay, that's cool. No worries. All right, y'all. So the book we are going to get into today is going to be The Siouan Tribes of the East by James Mooney. As you guys can see the title here. This is the PDF version of it, but still, it's the book. This book is being stored, of course, University of Michigan Library. So we're going to scroll past a lot of this here. I believe the first thing that we are going to see is a sideways picture of so it says it's a permanent ash bark wigwam of the wild rice gathering Ojibwa or Ojibwe. All right, so we're going to move on past that. Next thing we should get is advertisement. So I'm going to read through this, and as we go, I'm going to show you guys some different things that I found online regarding a lot of this information. Give me 1 second, y'all. All right, I had to grab a quick drink. All right, so it says the work of the Bureau of American Ethnology is conducted under Act of Congress for continuing ethnologic researches among the American Indians under the direction of the Smithsonian Institution. 2 series of publications are issued by the Bureau under authority of Congress, viz. Annual reports and bulletins. The annual reports are authorized by concurrent resolution from time to time and are published for the use of Congress and the Bureau. The publications of the series of bulletins was authorized by concurrent resolution first in 1886 and more definitely in 1888, and these also are issued for the use of Congress and the Bureau. In addition, the Bureau supervises the publication of a series of quarto volumes bearing the title Contributions to North American Ethnology. So if anybody, takes the time or wants to dig into that particular book, that might be something that would be good to build on here in the future. It says begun in 1877 by the United States Geographical Survey of the Rocky Mountain region. And then it goes on to say these publications are distributed primarily by Congress, and the portion of the editions printed for the Bureau are used for exchange with libraries and scientific scientific and educational institutions with special investigators in anthropology who send their own publications regularly to the Bureau. The exchange list of the Bureau is large, and the product of the exchange from a valuable ethnological library independent of the general library of the Smithsonian Institution. This library is in the constant use by the Bureau collaborators, as well as by other anthropologists resident in or visiting Washington. So, sounds like anthropologists are in the ethnologic libraries quite a bit. So that, that doesn't surprise me. It says the earlier volumes of the annual reports and the first 7 volumes of the contributions to North American ethnology are out of print. Exchanges and other contributions to the Bureau should be addressed. The Director, Bureau of American Ethnology, Washington, D.C., USA. All right, so just wanted to get that little bit of information out of the way. And let's move on. So again, the name of the book, The Siouan Tribes of the East. And reason why I'm covering this, because of course you guys know, I descend from Siouan peoples. And I think a lot of us do once we start digging in these particular areas where these people come from. A lot of us might find out that we, have some of this in our ancestry / genealogy. Okay, so Siouan Tribes of the East by James Mooney. Next, we should see the content. So we're going to get the introduction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the introduction portions of this, and then we're going to do the Biloxi, which is the first tribe that pulls up. And that's where we're going to stop for today. So that's about 20 something pages. And then, like I said, I'm going to try to break this series down into sections so I don't overwhelm you with too much information. All right, so before we begin, let me jump back in the chat real quick. See how everybody doing. Back for What's Mine. What's good, my brother? Good to see you. Appreciate that. Thank you. M. Cart, OCO. Appreciate you as well. Again, everybody, I'm streaming from 3 different places, so I'm trying something new here. So I'm on Mixcloud if anybody wants to hop over there. So that's Mixcloud, and when you go there, just search OP Miha. You should see the live stream. Also, I am on Discord, streaming from there, so I got a few people over there watching me as well. And neat thing about Discord is they can interact with me. So I told them, if they have any kind of questions or anything, they can definitely chime in and be part of the conversation. So, all right, y'all. So let's get back to it. Here we go. All right, so that's the contents, and as you guys can see in the contents, it does cover the Mohawk, the Tunica or Nuntulli, the Mohican, the Mattaponsky, the Sapani and Tutelo, the Okanichi, the Sara and the Kiawi, the Eno, the Shakori, the Wakan, the Sissepa, Cape Fear. We got the Catawba, of course, Waxhaw, the Sugary, the PD, the Waccamaw, Winya, the Siwi, Santee, Watery, and Congaree. And then it even breaks down into some of the other South Carolina tribes, which we have the Cherokee, the Sawano, the Uchi, the Saluda, the Nachi, the Itawa, Westo and Stono, the Edesto, Kusa, and Kusobo. All right, so all that is in this book. We're going to try to cover all of it, but again, I'm going to do it in sections. So again, I don't want to give you information overload here. All right, so let's get into the introduction. So first, it's going to talk about the Southern Atlantic stocks. Okay, so when we talk about stocks, these are going to be your different language groups. So most of us know the Algonquin, the Iroquois, and of course the Siouan stocks. So these are languages that these people speak. All right, and then they're broken down into different tribes. All right, y'all. So it says, when the French and English established their first permanent settlement in America, they found the whole country in possession of numerous aboriginal tribes. some large and powerful, others restricted to a single village and its environs. The variety of languages and dialects at first appeared to be well nigh infinite, but on further acquaintance, it was discovered that these were easily reducible to a few primary stocks. So what they're saying is that, you know, they ran into all these tribes, but as they started to study the languages, you know, it kind of reduced down to, you know, what each one was speaking. So excluding the Eskimo along the northern coast, the first great group comprised the tribes of the Algonquin stock. So again, once you all start doing your genealogy, and a lot of us have, you know, you're going to have this particular stock in your families as well. And you're also going to have the Iroquois stock and, of course, the Siouan stock in your families. It says whose territory on linguistic maps appears like a large triangle, extending on the north from the Atlantic to the Rocky Mountains, but gradually narrowing southward until it dwindles to a mere coast strip in Virginia and North Carolina, and finally ends about the mouth of Neuse River. Okay. It says the territory of the next great group, comprising the tribes of the Iroquois stock, either lay within or border on the Algonquin area, around Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, and stretching to a considerable distance inland on either side were the Iroquois proper, the Huron or Wyandot, and several other closely connected tribes. On the lower Susquehanna were the Conestoga or the Susquehanna and their allies. On Nottoway and Meharry rivers in Virginia were tribes bearing the names of those streams, and on the lower Neuse in North Carolina were the Tuscarora. While on the southwest in the fastness of the southern Alleghanies were the Cherokee, whose territory extended far into the Gulf states, as we all know. Although the territories held by the several Iroquois tribes were not all contiguous, the languages, with the exception of that of the Cherokee, which represent marked differences, are so closely related as to indicate a comparatively recent separation. So, with the Cherokee being a little more south, and like they were saying in the Gulf states, I guess they came to some realization that, they broke away from the rest of the Iroquois tribes and kind of went south. And we're going to see that this happened with the Biloxi. So, but we'll get to that. It says the country southwest of the Savannah was held chiefly by tribes of the Muskegon stock, occupying the greater portion of Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi, with parts of Tennessee and Florida. So that's something that, until reading this, I didn't know that the Muskegon stock of people were ever in Tennessee, but it makes sense with, migrations. All right, so it says west of all these tribes was the territory of the Great Siouan, or Dakotan stock, extending in a general way from the Mississippi to the Rocky Mountains, and from the Saskatchewan to the Arkansas. With the tribes farther west and southward, the present paper is not concerned. It says most of these tribes had fixed locations and permanent villages surrounded by extensive cornfields. They were primarily agriculturalists or fishermen, to whom hunting was hardly more than a pastime, and who followed the chase as serious business only in the interval between the gathering of one crop and the planting of the next. It says the Siouan tribes, on the contrary, although generally cultivating the ground to a limited extent, were essentially a race of hunters, following the game, especially the buffalo. Now I'm going to get into a thing about the buffalo that was here in this area. So just stay tuned for that. It says, from one district to another, here today and away tomorrow. Their introduction to the horse on the prairies of the West probably served only to give a wider opportunity for the indulgence of an inborn roving disposition. Nomads have short histories, and as they seldom stop long enough in one place to become identified with it, little importance was attached to their wanderings, and as little was recorded concerning them. All right. Let me check on y'all in these chats real quick. Peace, Shade Pink. Appreciate you being here, sis. The Autonomous Party. What's good, Big Mac? J Newly Natural. Peace, sis. Macadon. Honor, my brother. Arthur Gray. What's good? Peace to you. Love Legacy. What's good, my brother? Nighthawk. All right. Got all my tribal brothers in the building today. Appreciate y'all. All right, y'all. Back to it. Okay. So it says the position of the Algonquin and Iroquois tribes as the native proprietors of an immense territory claimed by two great rival European nations rendered their friendship a matter of prime concern throughout the colonial period, and each party put forth strenuous efforts to secure their alliance against the other. As a principal means to this end, numerous missionaries were sent among them, as we know. So we definitely know this was happening, especially by the French, to learn their languages, become familiar with their habits of living and modes of thought, and afterwards to write down the facts thus gathered. It says there were, besides among the early settlers of New England and the northern states generally, a number of men of literary bent who made the Indians a subject of study. And the result is a vast body of literature on the northern tribes covering almost every important detail of their language, habits, and history. All right. So it says in the South, the case was otherwise. The tribes between the mountains and the sea were but small importance politically. No sustained mission work was ever attempted among them. So I don't know if that's true or not. So, yeah. And there were but few literary men to take an interest in them. War, pestilence, whiskey, and systematic slave hunts had nearly exterminated the aboriginal occupants of the Carolinas before anybody had thought them of sufficient importance to ask who they were, how they lived, or what were their beliefs and opinions. Okay. The region concerning which least has been known ethnologically is that extending from the Potomac to the Savannah and from the mountains to the sea, comprising most of Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Of some of the tribes formerly within the area, the linguistics connection has long been settled. Of some others, it is a matter of recent discovery. Of others, again, is still a matter of doubt, while some must forever remain unclassified, for the tribes have perished from the earth without leaving a word of their languages behind. So I don't necessarily agree with this. I think a lot of tribes just were absorbed by other tribes. And that's, why you don't really hear about them that much. And, sometimes you got to do what you got to do to survive. So that's what I'm thinking that probably was happening. So since the Indians occupying the coast of Virginia and extending as far inland as the geological structure line marked by the falls of the principal streams, formed the Powhatan Confederacy, belonging to the Algonquin stock. So we kind of know this. We kind of discussed this about the Powhatan Confederacy. They were mostly Algonquin stock of Indians or speakers. Adjoining them on the south were another Algonquin people known to to Raleigh's colonists of 1585 as the Whippamiaq. Then it says, and at a later date as Yeopen, Pequaman, Pequastank, and Potiski, occupying that portion of North Carolina, north of Albemarle Sound, and extending as far westward as Edenton. Between Albemarle Sound and Pamlico River, and on the outlying islands were the Skeeton, or Secoton, of Raleigh's time, known afterwards as the Matamuskeet. So me and Love Legacy actually did a build on the Matamuskeet and the genealogy or surnames attached to them. So it says the Machapunga and Hatteras Indians, while the Pamlico country between Pamlico and the estuary of the Neuse River was held by the Pamlico or Pamtico, together with the Bear River Indians, the Pamuuk or Pamawok of Raleigh's colonists. All of these people being Algonquin. So these are all Algonquin speakers. All right. So the tribes here classified as Algonquin are known to have been such from the vocabularies and isolated words of their languages given by Smith, Starchy, Lawson, and others, and from the numerous local names which they have left behind in the territory they once occupied. All right. So it says the Nuseok, who in 1585 lived just south of the Neuse estuary in the extreme eastern part of Craven and Carteret counties in North Carolina, and who were in alliance with the Pamlico, may also have been Algonquin. Okay. Says this brings the southern limit of that stock along the coast almost to Cape Lookout. The Choanoke or Chowan on Chowan River, chiefly on the eastern bank, contiguous to the Whippamiaq, seems also to have belonged to the same stock, judging from the half-dozen names preserved by Lane. Okay, so the Iroquois stock was represented by at least 4 tribes, 3 of which are known from vocabularies and other linguistic material. First came the Nottoway on Nottoway and Blackwater Rivers in southeastern Virginia, contiguous on the north and east to the Powhatan Confederacy, and on the south to the Choanoke. The name Nottoway, by which they were commonly known, signifies snake or enemies, and was given by their neighbors, the Powhatan, being one of the generic names used by the Algonquin tribes to denote any of a different stock. Okay, so Mangoic, the name by which they were known to the tribes on the Sound, is another generic term used by the Algonquin tribes to designate those of Iroquois stock and signify stealthy ones. In the north, it was commonly written Mingo or Mingui. They called themselves Chirohaka, a word of uncertain etymology. The fact that neither of these generic terms was ever applied to the Choanoke is evidence that they belong to the common Algonquin stock. Adjoining the Nottoway in close alliance with them were the Meherrin, on the lower course of the river of the same name. They were a remnant of the Susquehanna or Conestoga. All right, so it goes on to say who had fled from the north on the disruption of that tribe about 1675. All right. On the lower Neuse and its tributaries, the Contentua and the Trent, and extending up about as far as the present site of Raleigh, were the Tuscarora, the most important tribe of North Carolina east of the mountains. Before they rose against the whites in 1711, they were estimated at 1,200 warriors, or perhaps 5,000 souls. But their terrible losses in the ensuing war, amounting to 400 in one battle and 1,000 in another, completely broke their power. The remnant of the hostile abandoned the remnant of the hostiles abandoned their country and fled to their kindred, the Iroquois of 5 nations of New York, by whom they were incorporated as a 6th nation. Those who had kept the peace were removed in 1717 to a reservation on the northern bank of the Roanoke River in the present Bertie County, North Carolina. So I tried to go into Ancestry just to see if I could find anything on anybody in Bertie County, and it's not really easy to do without, names. So it says, so that the tribe was completely extirpated from its original territory. From here, they gradually removed in small parties to join their kindred in the north, and in 1790, there remained only about 60 souls on their lands in Bertie County. So anybody with any kind of ancestry to Bertie County, this may be something to look into. And it says these also finally withdrew a few years later. The 4th Iroquoian tribe was the powerful Cherokee Nation, occupying all of North Carolina and Virginia west of the Blue Ridge, as far north, at least according to their tradition, as the Peaks of Otter, near the headwaters of James River, together with the upper portion of South Carolina and the mountain section of Georgia and Tennessee. The Corey on the coastlands south of the Neuse also may have been a tribe of the same stock. So that's the Corey. All right. So it says further southward were the Catawba, who had their settlements about the river of the same name, just below the borderline between North Carolina and South Carolina, ranging upward to the hunting grounds of the Cherokee, their inveterate enemies. Okay, so we all know this already. When first known, they were estimated at 1,500 fighting men, or at least 6,000 souls. But so rapid was their decline that in 1743, according to Adair, they were reduced to less than 400 warriors. And among these were included the broken remnants of more than 20 smaller tribes, which had taken refuge with their more powerful neighbors, but still retained their distinct dialects. Adair enumerates several of these incorporated tribes, but the mere fact of such an alliance proves nothing as to linguistic affinities. A few Catawbas still remain on the reservation in South Carolina, and recent investigation among them has proven conclusively that they are of Siouan stock, which we know. Closely related to them linguistically were the Wakan, occupying a small territory in the fork of Neuse and Contentine rivers, and adjoining the more numerous Tuscarora. Although at one time a considerable tribe, they seem to have disappeared suddenly and completely soon after the Tuscarora War. If not absorbed by the Tuscarora, they probably removed to the south and were incorporated with the Catawba. All right. So turning now from the tribes whose affinities are thus well known, it will be found by referring to the map that we have still to account for a large central area. In Virginia, these territories included all west of a line drawn through Richmond and Fredericksburg up to the Blue Ridge, or about one half the area of the state. In North Carolina, it includes the basin of the Roanoke, the Tar, the Cape Fear, the Yadkin, the Upper Catawba Rivers, comprising more than 2/3 of the area of the state. In South Carolina, it comprises nearly the whole central and eastern portion. In the 3 states in the territory in question comprise an area of about 70,000 square miles, formerly occupied by about 40 different tribes. So that's pretty telling. All right, let me check on y'all real quick again, make sure everybody's good. What's good, my brother Kiowa? Jarrell Mitchell, peace. Carrie Bay, peace to you, brother. Rainstorm, peace. Jay Susquehanna, peace to you. Who else we got in here? Gentle Bull, what's good, my brother? Peace to you as well. So again, everybody, I'm streaming on 3 different platforms, so I'm trying something out here. Of course, I'm on Mixcloud, and I am also on Discord. All right. Back to it. Okay. So it says, who were the Indians of the central area? For a long time, the question was ignored by ethnologists, and it was implicitly assumed that they were like their neighbors, Iroquois or Algonquin in the north and Catawban in the south. It was never hinted that they might be anything different, and still less was it supposed that they would prove to be part of a great Siouan or Dakotan family, whose nearest known representatives were beyond the Mississippi or about the Upper Lakes, nearly 1,000 miles away. Yet the fact is now established that some at least of those tribes, and these the most important, were of that race of hunters, while the apparently older dialect forms to be met with in the east, the identification of the Biloxi near Mobile as a part of the same stock, and the current testimony of the Siouan tribes themselves to the effect that they had come from the east. All right, so that's important. All now render it extremely probable that the original home of the Siouan race was not on the prairies of the west, but amidst the eastern foothills of the southern Alleghanies, or at least as far eastward as the upper Ohio region. Some years ago, the author's investigations led them to suspect that such might yet prove to be the case. And in a paper on the Indian tribes of the District of Columbia, read before the Anthropological Society of Washington in 1889, Mooney, he expressed this opinion. All right, so now we're going to get into Siouan migration and Iroquois conquest. All right, so Horatio Hale wrote a book about the Tunica language. And it says, Horatio Hale, to whom belongs the credit of first discovering a Siouan language on the Atlantic coast, noted the evidence that the Tunica language was older in its form than the cognate dialects of the West, and predicted that if this should prove true, it would argue against the supposition, which at first seemed natural, that the eastern Siouan tribes were merely offshoots from the western parent stock. Investigation might result in showing that the western Siouan, like the western Algonquin tribes, had their original home in the east. All right, so that's important information. It says the inference that the region west of the Mississippi was the original home of Siouan tribes, and that those of that stock who dwelt on the Ohio or east of the Alleghanies were immigrants from the western prairies did not, by any means, follow from the fact that the majority of these tribes were now dwellers on the plains. As by the same course of reasoning, we might conclude that the Aryan had their original seat in Western Europe, that the Portuguese were immigrants from Brazil, or that the English derived their origin from America. All right. As early as 1701, Gravier stated that the Ohio was known to the Miami and Illinois as the River of the Arkansas, because that people had formerly lived along it. The Arkansas or Quapaw are a Siouan tribe. So the Arkansas or the Arkansas are the Quapaw. All right, living at that time on the lower Arkansas River, but now in Indian Territory. More than 60 years ago, Major Sibley, one of the best authorities of that period in regard to the Western tribes, obtained from an aged chief of the Osage, a well-known Siouan tribe speaking the same language as the Quapaw, a statement which confirms that of Gravier. The chief said that the tradition had been steadily handed down from their ancestors, that the Osage had originally immigrated from the east because the population had become too numerous for their hunting grounds. He describes the forks of Allegheny and Monongahela rivers and the falls of the Ohio at Louisville, where he said they had dwelt some time, and where large bands had separated from them and distributed themselves throughout the surrounding country. Those who did not remain in the region of the Ohio followed its waters until they reached the mouth of the ascended to the mouth of the Missouri, where other separations took place, some going northward up the Mississippi, others advancing up the waters of the Missouri. He enumerated several tribes which had sprung from the original migrating body. All right. And it says, Catlin heard a similar story among the Malden, another Siouan people living far up the Missouri. And Dorsey had since found the tradition to be common to almost all the tribes of that stock. So Dorsey migrations in Kansas. Indeed, two of these tribes, the Omaha and the Kansa, cherish sacred shells which they assert were brought with them from the great water of the sunrise. All right. It's starting to get interesting. So it says when this Western movement took place, we can only approximately conjecture. Like most Indian migrations, it was probably a slow and devious progress with no definite objective point in view, interrupted whenever a particular fine hunting region was discovered, or as often as it becomes necessary to fight some tribe in front, and resembling rather the tedious wanderings of the Hebrews in the desert than the steady march of an immigrant train across the plains. De Soto found the Kappa or Quapaw already established on the western bank of the Mississippi in 1541, although still a considerable distance above their later position at the mouth of the Arkansas. The name Quapaw, properly Uguapa, signifies people living down the river, being the converse of Omaha, properly Umaha, which designates those going up the river. And the occurrence of the name thus early shows that other tribes of the same stock were already seated farther up the river. The absence of Siouan names along De Soto's route in the interior country, held later by the Osage, is significant. In view of the fact that we at once recognized as Muskogee a number of the names which occur in the narrative of this progress through the Gulf states. The inference would be that the Muskegon tribes were already established in the southern region, where we have always known them before the Siouan tribes had fairly left the Mississippi. In accordance with the Osage tradition, the immigrant tribes, after crossing the mountains, probably followed down the valleys of New River and the Big Sandy to the Ohio, descended to the later to its mouth, and there separated. A part going up the Mississippi and Missouri, the others continuing their course southward and southwestward. All right. It says, in their slow march toward the setting sun, the Quapaw probably brought up the rear, as their name lingered longest in the traditions of the Ohio tribes. And they were yet in the vicinity of that stream when encountered by De Soto. The theory of a Siouan migration down the valley of the Big Sandy is borne out by the fact that this stream was formerly known as the Tuscarora, a corruption of the Iroquois name for the Tutelo and other Siouan tribes in the south. All right. So it says, as to the cause of this prehistoric exodus, it is impossible to speak positively. Hale assumes that the Siouan tribes followed the buffalo as it gradually receded westward, but this position is untenable. As just shown, some of these tribes were beyond the Mississippi at least 350 years ago, while the disappearance of the buffalo from the east was not accomplished until within the present century. The savage on foot and armed only with bow and arrows could never exterminate the game over any large area. It required the gun, the horse, and the railroad of civilization to effect the wholesale slaughter that has swept from the face of the earth one of the noblest of American quadrupeds. All right. And it says, there is an abundant testimony to the fact that buffalo were numerous in the Piedmont region of Virginia and Carolina, at least as late as 1730, and in Ohio Valley and Tennessee until after the close of the French and Indian War, and did not finally disappear from the Central Basin until 1810. We must seek other reasons than the disappearance of the game from what was all a wilderness, keeping in mind at the same time the inherent unrest of savages and especially of the Siouan tribes. The most probable cause of this great exodus was the pressure from the north and from the south of hostile tribes of alien lineage, leaving to the weaker Siouan tribes to alternatively but to flee or to remain and be crushed between the milestones. It says they closed to an abandoned the county. They closed to abandon the county and retreat across the mountains, the only direction in which a retreat was open to them. Okay, so I'm gonna stop right here for a second. So since we just read about the buffalo, I wanted to bring up an article that I found about what was here. So it goes on to say that, and this article is actually Bison bellows, bison east of the Mississippi. Okay. So it says bison east of the Mississippi are mostly gone from American memory, yet they were once widespread and regionally abundant, leaving lasting impressions on the eastern landscape. There are towns named Buffalo in 8 eastern states. There are Buffalo Rivers or Buffalo Creeks in at least 7 states and Buffalo Mountain in 4, Several towns owe their name to ancient buffalo mineral licks. These include French Lick, Indiana, and Stamping Grounds, Kentucky. So it says bison occurred from New York to Florida and from the Mississippi River to the tidewater lands of the East Coast. Locally, Native Americans and later during the 17th and 18th centuries, Europeans depended upon bison for meat, shelter, clothing, and other products. While worn bison trails called traces were commonly used for human travel as they extended for many miles, many became routes for today's roads and railroads. So that's some interesting information there. It says beginning in 1670, Spanish journals record bison in Florida, especially in the Panhandle and in the neighboring states. While these bison were commonly hunted by Native Americans and Spaniards, and bison robes were common possessions, fewer than 10 bison were recorded as harvested in a day. Bison herds seem to have consisted of dozens, perhaps rarely a few hundred animals. The Illinois tallgrass prairies supported bison herds of at least hundreds of animals. This habitat extended across Indiana into Ohio and western Kentucky in 1769. Daniel Boone relates seeing thousands of buffalo on the western Kentucky bluegrass. Says such number occurring primarily at mineral licks that attracted bison from all directions, as evidenced by numerous radiating traces. Also in 1760, George Washington killed bison in the Kanawha Valley of West Virginia. At this time, bison were rather plenty in the Ohio River Valley. Soon, bison were part of a commercial trade, mostly of hides along the Ohio River and its major tributaries. So, I'll drop this link for anybody who is interested in reading more about this. That may have been some information people weren't privy to. So let me drop that here. But, just going off of that, we had bison, we had buffalo, bison in this area. I know a lot of times when we think of that animal, we just think of it in the western prairie area. What's good, Tanari? Gunsmoke, peace. Miss Mika, good to see you. Let me see anybody else I missed. Okay. If I did miss anybody, please forgive me. Jarrell Mitchell got a green. Peace. Urban Rock Media, peace to you. All right. I think we're good. Okay, so continuing on. All right. So I think we're right here where it says the Muskegon tribes all claim to have come into the Gulf states from beyond the Mississippi. And the tradition is clearest among those of them, the Choctaw and Chickasaw, who may have supposed to have crossed last. All right. And then it says, as they advanced, they came at last into collision with the Tamiquan and Siouan tribes of Florida and Georgia, and then began the long struggle which ended. And I stopped for a second there because I think we have had some conversations about this particular tribe. Brother Back for What's Mine, we will discuss later. Okay. It says, which ended only with the destruction of the Tamiquan and the incorporation by the Creek within the historic period of the last of the Uchi, leaving the Muskegon race supreme from Florida Cape to the Combahee River in South Carolina. This wave of invasion must necessarily have had its effect on the Carolina tribes towards the north. The Yamasee of South Carolina were of Muskegon stock and seem to have driven out a preceding tribe of the Uchian race. All right, interesting. Okay, so it says it is useless to theorize on prehistoric migrations beyond the period of coherent tradition. Within this period, traditional and historical evidence point out as the cradle of the Algonquin race, the coast region lying between St. Lawrence River and Chesapeake Bay. The tribes occupying this central position, the Abenaki, the Mohegan, the Lenape, and the Nanticoke, regarded themselves as constituting one people and were conceded by the others to be the grandfathers or progenitors of the stock. All right, so I have heard that as well. It says from here, as their numbers increased, they sent colonies northward along the coast, driving back the Eskimo and probably the Bothuk westward and northwestward up the valley of the St. Lawrence and the lakes and southward to occupy the coast of Virginia and a part of Carolina, where, in conjunction with the Iroquois tribes, they expelled the Cherokee from the upper waters of the Ohio and compelled them to take refuge in the mountain fastness on the south. Most of these movements, although the subject of well-supported tradition, belong to prehistoric times. But the advance of the Algonquin tribes into the northwest is comparatively modern. Since the introduction of firearms within the last 2 centuries, the Ojibwe had driven the Sioux and Minotari from central Wisconsin and Lake Superior to beyond the Mississippi, while the Cree have swept the whole country from Winnipeg to the Great Slave Lake, and the Blackfeet, Cheyenne, and Arapaho have moved cut from the Saskatchewan and Red River and occupied the plains. All right. It says, but the great agents in the expulsion or extermination of the eastern Siouan tribes were the Confederate Iroquois of New York. With these may have been included the Tuscarora, who, though established on the Neuse River in North Carolina, retained the clear tradition of their common origin and were regarded as an outlying tribe of the Confederacy with which they afterward united as an integral part. From the very first, we find these Patelis destroyers making war on everything outside the narrow limits of their confederacy, pursuing their victims, on the one hand, to the very gates of Boston, and on the other, to the banks of the Mississippi, and making their name a synonym for death and destruction from Huron Bay to the Gulf of Mexico. Community, it says, community of blood or affinity of language availed not to turn aside their fury. And the kindred, Huron, Erie, and Conestoga suffered alike with the Ottawa and the Illinois. When their warfare against the southern tribes was inaugurated, we do not know. It was probably continuous with the expulsion of the Cherokee from Upper Ohio. It was in full progress nearly 3 centuries ago. As early as 1608, John Smith found the Iroquois known to the Powhatan tribes as Massawomic, regarded as their most mortal enemies by all the tribes of Virginia and Maryland. The Susquehannock, or Conestoga, at the head of the bay, who had nearly 600 warriors, all great and well proportionated men. He found palisadioed in their towns to defend them from the Massawomics, their mortal enemies. All right. So 65 years later, 65 years later, These giant-like men, notwithstanding their Palisades defenses, were forced to abandon their country to the conquering Iroquois and come down upon the frontiers of Virginia, thus precipitating the Indian War, which resulted in Bacon's Rebellion. On the upper Rappahannock, he was told that the Massawomac made war with all the world, and he states that all the tribes of the interior are continually tormented by them, of whose cruelties they generally complained, and very importunate they were with me and my company to free them from those tormentors. To those purpose, they offered food, conducted assistance, and continual subjection. All right. So in 1701, John Lawson, the surveyor general of Carolina, made a circuitous journey through the interior from Charleston to Pamlico Sound. And on every hand alike, from Indians and traders, he heard stories of the ruin wrought by the Senecers, or Seneca, who having completed the conquest or extermination of all the tribes which had formerly withstood their power in the north, were now at liberty to turn the full current of their hatred upon the weaker ones of the South. Even on the border of South Carolina, he was shown grave piles erected over the bodies of their victims. He found the larger tribes living in forts and obliged to keep continual spies and outguards on the lookout for better security, while smaller tribes, the Sapani, Tutelo, and other Siouan stock, were consolidating and withdrawing to the protection of the English settlement. All right. He described the Iroquois as a sort of people that ranged several thousand miles, making all prey they lay their hands on. These are feared by all the savage nations I ever was among. A striking confirmation of the statement given to Smith 70 years before, that they made war with all the world. All right. Byrd, about 1730, says that the northern Indians were the implacable enemies of the Siouan tribes, and that the frequent inroads of the Seneca had compelled the Sara to abandon their beautiful home on the banks of the Dan and take refuge on the Petey. All right. On one occasion, the Iroquois themselves asserted that these southern Indians had been for a long time their enemies, and that they, the Iroquois, formerly had been so exasperated against them that they had taken them prisoners, even out of the house of the Christians. All right. And it says, when at last in 1722, at the urgent solicitation of the colonial government, they consented to cease their attacks upon the miserable remnant gathered under the guns of Fort Christiana. They declared that they had cherished towards these people so inveterate an enmity that it could be extinguished only by their total exasperation. Okay. All right, so we're getting to the end of this, and I'm going to get into the Biloxi here in a second. It says, on the same subject, Byrd said in 1728, and now I mention the Northern Indians, it may not be improper to take notice of their implacable hatred to those of the South. Their wars are everlasting, without any peace, enmity being the only inheritance among them that descends from father to son, and either party will march 1,000 miles to take their revenge upon such hereditary enemies. The great overmastering fact in the history of the Siouan tribes of the East is that of their destruction by the Iroquois. The various tribes and confederacies which made up these Eastern Siouan groups or were intimately connected with it will be treated separately. The description of each tribe will be preceded by a synonym giving the various names known to have been applied to it. The Biloxi, whose isolated position has given them a separate history, will first be described, and more closely aggregated tribes and confederacies will then receive attention. Okay. So that was kind of a breakdown of, what's going on between the, Algonquin, Iroquois, and Siouan tribes. And, a lot of us have heard stories over the years of, certain tribes not getting along with other tribes. We know about all these wars that were happening. So, it's definitely a real thing. But, as today goes, as far as today goes, we're, kind of putting that, not, that those kind of fightings aside and trying to build, So I feel like that's, where we're trying to get to. All right. Peace to everybody that's in the live stream listening in the chat. Definitely bang the like button on your way in. Again, I'm streaming on YouTube, Mixcloud, and Discord. All right. So let's get into the Biloxi. So as you guys all know, Biloxi is in Mississippi, which probably for the most part is considered Muskegon territory. So you had the Siouan tribe in the middle of this place. Okay. And what I did was with the Biloxi tribe is I actually pulled up where they are today and who they are. So I'll show you that here in a minute. So we have the Biloxi. So as you guys, I hope you guys can see all this here, but these are all the different names that they went by. There's quite a few. So I'm not going to read through all of them, but we know them as the Biloxi Indians. Okay. All right. So it says inspection of the various names which have been applied to the tribe suggests that they are all derivatives from Tonics, the name by which the Biloxi call themselves. The interchangeability of the liquids L, N, and R in different dialects is a well-known linguistic fact. While the substitute of a liable for a dental or a compound liable dental is a frequent occurrence in the Siouan language. As examples, Dorsey mentions MDA or MADA or BLA, BLA, and MDU or BLU, predominantly particles in Dakota, which become Hata or Hatu in Oto, and Ta or Tu in Winnebago. MDE or BDE, the Dakota word for lake, is a good example of a compound sound, which to an alien people might appear a simple liable or dental. The name Biloxi or Biloxi signifies trifling or worthless in the language of the Choctaw. Okay, so here again, you get a Muskogee tribe, their thoughts about the Siouan tribe. It says it may have been given by the tribe on account of its resemblance to the proper name. In accordance with a common habit among Indian tribes of substituting for a tribal name of unknown meaning some transferable name of similar sound from their own language, especially when, as in this case, the latter term has a derogatory or sarcastic import. The people themselves, like 100 other tribes, cannot explain the meaning of their name. Dorsey thinks the word is connected with the Siouan root Changa or Hanga, signifying first, foremost, original, ancestral, an idea embodied in many tribal names. The assumption of antiquity being always flattering to national pride. Thus, the Winnebago call themselves Tuscarora, the people speaking the original language. In Biloxi, we can find Tunica, signifying the first time, and Tanex Haya, or Biloxi people, would thus mean the first people. Dorsey suggests that the Old French form of 1699, Anani, maybe from Dorsey suggests that the Anani may be from Anyadi or Haryadi, another word for people in their own language. All right. The Biloxi were first noted by Iberville, who found them in 1699 living about Biloxi Bay on the coast of Mississippi, in connection with two other small tribes, the Pascagoula and Moktobe. The three together, numbering only about 20 cabins. It is evident that they were even then but remnants of former larger tribes, which, having been reduced by war, pestilence, or other calamities, had been compiled to consolidate and take refuge with the powerful Choctaw, who claimed all of the surrounding country. All right. At a later period, the Biloxi removed northward to Pearl River and thence crossed the Mississippi into Louisiana. So when I get into the actual tribe, who they are today, we're going to see this. Probably about 1763, settling on Red River and Avoyelles Lake near the present Marksville. They were mentioned in a list of southern tribes in 1764. In 1784, they and the Pascagoula, who still lived near them, were estimated together at 30 warriors, or probably about 100 souls. All right. In 1806, they had two villages, one at Avoyelles. Forgive me if I'm saying this wrong. Anybody from Louisiana, I'm sorry. On Red River, and on the other on the lake, and wandered up and down the bayous on the southern side of the streams. In 1829, they were reported to number 65, living with Caddo, Pascagoula, and other small tribes about Red River and the frontier of Texas. About the same time, Mexican authorities report them as numbering 20 families on the eastern bank of the Neches in Texas. After this, no more was heard of them until recently. All right. So, check back on y'all. What's good, everybody? What's good? All right, y'all. Bang the like button when you come in, please. All right, back to it. All right, so the Biloxi. So from the fact that the Biloxi were known in history only as a tribe subordinate to the Choctaw, it was very naturally supposed that they were of the same linguistic connection, more especially as most of the region of the Gulf states was held by tribes of Muskegon stock. Sibley, in 1805, stated that they spoke the general trade language known as Mobilian. All right, so that's interesting. Mobilian, okay. A corrupt Choctaw, but had a distinct language of their own, without, however, giving up any hint as to what that language might be. It remained for Gostich to prove that the Biloxi are the remnant of an isolated Siouan tribe. All right. In 1886, while pursuing some linguistic researches in the Southwest, in the interest of the Bureau of Ethnology, Mr. Gostich came across a small band of Biloxi still living near Lormier Bridge on Bayou Boeuf in Rapides Parish, Louisiana, 16 miles south of Alexandria. They numbered only 25 all told, including several mixed bloods, and hardly half a dozen were able to speak the language fluently. But from these he obtained a vocabulary which established their Siouan affinity beyond a doubt. Although on the verge of extinction, poor, miserable, and debilitated from their malarial surroundings, they yet retained all of the old pride of race, insisting on being called Tonics and refusing to be known as Biloxi. All right. Following up this discovery, Dorsey, the specialist in the Siouan tribes, visited the Biloxi of Louisiana in 1892 and again in 1893, and has succeeded in collecting from this small remnant a valuable body of linguistic and myth material. A synopsis of the result obtained appears in his paper on the Biloxi, published in 1893 in the Proceedings of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. He states that in 1892, the only survivors of the tribe remaining in Louisiana were about a dozen individuals living near Lecomte and Rapides Parish. One of the informants said, however, that towards the close of the Civil War, or about 1865, a large party of Biloxi and Pascagoula removed to a place in Texas, which he called Comanche. It says this is doubtless Comanche River. And forgive me, people in Texas, if I'm saying that wrong. A northern tributary of Red River in the Choctaw Nation, and an old settlement nucleus for Choctaw, Caddo, and other immigrant tribes from Louisiana. From personal inquiry among the Caddo, Creek, and Choctaw, I am led to believe that these Biloxi are now with the mixed band of Alabama Coshawty, and Muskegee living near Livingston in Polk County, Texas. All right. And in a smaller settlement near Houston. There are none now in the Choctaw Nation or among the Caddo in Oklahoma, but one or two individuals are said to be living near Okmulgee in the Creek Nation. All three of these tribes are perfectly familiar with the name. All right. Their former neighbors, the Choctaws, say that the Biloxi were originally cannibals. The statement must be taken with some allowance, however, as the charge of cannibalism was one of the most frequent made by Indian against those of an alien or hostile tribe. All right, it goes on to say, from information obtained by Mr. Dorsey, it appears that the Biloxi formerly dressed in the general style of other eastern tribes, and that their tattooing was sometimes practiced among them. They made wooden bowls, horn and bone implements, baskets, and pottery. They still remember the name of three gentes, the deer, grizzly bear, and the alligator, and probably had others in former times. Descent, as usual, was in the female line, which we know, the matriarch. And there was a most elaborate kinship system. Their mythology, as noted by Dorsey, had eventually been much affected by contact with the whites. They venerate the thunder and will talk about it only in clear weather. They will not kill or eat the snipe because it is the sister of the thunder. They also respect the hummingbird because, as they say, it always speaks the truth. They believe that the slain deer is resurrected 3 times but that if killed the fourth time, the spirit leaves the body forever. The same belief is held by the Cherokee. Their dwellings were of two kinds: the low wigwam of the eastern tribes and the high pointed teepee of the more nomadic western Indians. Our latest information concerning the Biloxi of Louisiana is contained in a letter received by Mr. Dorsey in February of this year, 1894, in which it is stated that the handful of survivors were then preparing to move further westward, presumably to the Choctaw Nation, where all stragglers from the Louisiana tribes find a welcome. All right, y'all. So that is where we're going to stop at for today. This is the Siouan tribes of the East. So before we do so, I want to get into the Biloxi tribe real quick here. So now they're called the Tunica Biloxi Tribe of Louisiana. So this is their page about their tribe. So, we got some pictures here. So as far as their government, this gentleman here, I believe his name is Purite, but this is Marshall Purite, their chairman. This is Marshall Ray Sampson Sr., vice chairman. We have Miss Beverly Chapman Rachel, their treasurer. We have Mr. James Craig III. He's a council member. We have Harold Purite Sr. He's also a council member. So most of the council is of this family. Bobby Purite, also a council member. But this is the Biloxi tribe. This is their representation today. So I just wanted to, kind of show you guys that, and I'll try to, with the next set of tribes, try to gather up some pictures, and hopefully they have a website as well. What's good, Sister Holbert? Good to see you, sis. All right, let me see who else is in here that I missed. Let's see, Autonomous Copper Main, 8th Line, peace. Honey Covered Roses, peace to you. Here, let me go back here a little bit, make sure, because I know I missed some people. Ancient History Hunters, peace, sis. Good to see you here. Who else we got? Making sure I catch everybody. Rodriguez Deep. Yo, good to see you. Let's see here. Let me see here. Okay. Just wanted to make sure I got everybody. But yeah, that's the Siouan tribes of the East that we're going to cover for today. Again, if you haven't had a chance to get over to the Mixcloud to follow me, definitely do so. Again, I was trying something out to see on how many platforms I could stream on. So, yeah, appreciate you, Kyle. Thank you, brother. Back for What's Mine. Appreciate you. Sister Holbert, good to see you, sis. I hope you are doing well. Much love to you. But yeah, y'all, so that's all I got for today. Again, I didn't want to hold everybody too long. Let me stop the screen share real quick. Love you all. I appreciate everybody still, that comes out to support me. I hope everybody is finding their way with, who you are. And not sure when I'll be back to do another one of these. I'll just kind of, I get inspired a little bit and just want to do stuff. So, no real schedule as far as that goes. But I love you all. And I'll see everybody next time I'm back. Take care, y'all. Peace. Kana Hop Napi relatives and Biwa Pahushka. Oh, be me, huh? Oh, be me, huh? Oh, be me, huh? Go be me, huh?
This is a dangerous group that we're dealing with now.
Dodge the hijack again. Kinda hop-nappy relatives. They had no idea their ancestors had been free.
I'll beat me half. 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 I'll beat me half.
They had no idea their ancestors had been free.
I'll beat me half. I'll beat me half. I'll beat me half. I'll beat me half.